What's up? This is Anthony Davis. I just wanted to do another video about the safety in yoga. Let's talk about hypermobility. Let's talk about whether or not you even need to stretch and whether or not you need to become more flexible. You very likely don't need to become as flexible as you think, and that will change the way that you practice or teach yoga, as the case may be. So let's take a deeper look at this. Okay, so when you're practicing yoga, oftentimes the goal seems to be flexibility. You push yourself into the most flexible version of a pose, and I would continue to say this over and over and over. That is not safe. That is not healthy for your tissues, your ligaments, your tendons, or your muscles, your fascia. It's not good for any of it. And it'll create sort of an addiction to stretching where you won't feel good unless you're stretching, and that's no good either. So let's look at some simple poses and the sort of classical yoga version, and let's just evaluate whether or not that's necessary or even safe for most people. So when we are evaluating whether or not you have full range of motion in your joints, and yes, there are standards for what is considered full or normal range of motion for an otherwise healthy individual with no congenital abnormalities and no injuries and things like that. And one of those sort of standards is going to be hip flexion. Hip flexion is when you, at the hip joint between the thigh bone and your hip complex, actually I'll show you here. Hip flexion looks like this. You take the femur and you bend. So it's this bend right here in the hip joint. And full range of motion here is essentially 90 degrees, it looks like that. So you should be able to get your legs straight. And that is full. Now in a lot of yoga poses, like Parivrtta Utthita, right? Oh, that's twisted. Yeah, like Utthita Padangusthasana. You will grab your big toe and you'll pull your leg up like this and stand and balance on one leg. This is probably about 110 degrees or so, and some people can get their leg up here while they do this pose. So it's very extreme range of motion. Some people can get an extra 45 degrees of range there, and that is completely beyond what is normal and healthy in a human being. And when you move your joints beyond normal range of motion, you are going to end up straining the ligaments around your joints, and those ligaments will become looser, and they will not hold your joint as steady and strong in the capsules. In addition to that, there will be compensations. Most likely, if you are pulling your leg up this high, your pelvis is tilting underneath you. You're pulling and putting unnecessary strain on the posterior or back of your body, and there will be other compensations as well. So you're teaching yourself to move in a way that doesn't respect your other movements throughout the day. Your walking, your gait cycle, anything that you do, squatting, anything, mainly walking. But any other movements throughout the day, you need to be integrated. You have to use your feet and your legs and your core and your arms all together. And when you're straining one part of the body individually, you will sort of create imbalances and create weak spots, or you could call it like a flaccid, like limp, essentially limp tissues. And nobody wants that. So let's look at a common pose that involves hip flexion, and that is Uttanasana is a forward fold. So if I want to hinge at the hips, I can fold forward. And in yoga, oftentimes Uttanasana will look like this, right? I'm not even going to straighten my legs, but you would straighten the legs completely and get your hands all the way down to the floor and fold forward. And then there's Padangusthasana, where you grab the toes and actually pull yourself down. And you can see very clearly that I'm going past the 90-degree mark, which means that I am moving into hypermobility. I'm moving beyond my joint's normal range of motion. I'm straining the entire back side of my body by giving it completely, allowing my butt, my back, my hamstrings, allowing those muscles to just be limp, allowing them to just say, ugh, and give into gravity completely. And so I'm not using any muscular strength to hold myself in the position. So that's not doing me any favors. It's not teaching my muscles and my brain to communicate with my muscles in a way that will promote health and longevity in my joints and my tissues. So I would recommend, I'll just give you this example. Instead of having straight locked legs and folding all the way down to the floor, you can put a slight bend in the knees, send the hips back. Most people will have an anterior hip shift. They'll kind of naturally, if they're just relaxed and standing, they'll stand with their hips kind of pushed forward like this. And that, you've got weak glutes and extra strain here on the front compartment of the hips and the knees, and most likely some hyperextension of the spine. You're excessively back-bended, all kinds of different compensations. So most people will have their hips forward anyway, so let's train them to get those hips back. So shift the weight back into the heels, right? Your toes become a little bit light. And then tighten up the belly so that you have nice intra-abdominal pressure. You don't have to go crazy with this, but just lift through the sternum and drop the tailbone and the pubic bone both straight down. So it's not a posterior tilt, it's not an anterior tilt. You just want to find a neutral pelvis and then allow it to be sort of heavy while you lift up and expand outward through the rib cage. Now with this posture and just this intra-abdominal pressure is a whole lesson, many lessons in itself. But let's just assume that you have good posture and good tensegrity. Tensegrity, I have a video on that, so look that up. Tensegrity in the body here, and you just take this whole structure, bend the knees a little bit, send the hips back, and then just start to, again, reach backwards with your hips. And as soon as you feel a little bit of a stretch here on the back of the legs, you can hold right there. Notice, I'm not even close to 90 degrees, right? And I feel a stretch. And I just showed you, I can get my hands down to the floor. So with proper alignment, I actually doesn't take much to feel a stretch. Right there is plenty. And I'm not forcing anything. And it'll take a lot of strength to hold here. So you can hold your posture here. You can just do this as a static hold, or you can do it dynamic where you start here and you can link this to your breath. So you can take a breath in here and then exhale and just push the hips back and then just load up so you feel the strength of your legs holding you, and then lift back up using the strength of your legs and your butt and your back to pull you up. So you can do this exhaling down and inhaling up, or you could do it as a static hold. Again, the point being that you take a normal classical yoga posture, like a full forward fold here, and you just back off to the point where you're not straining any joints. It's a very simple concept, and you can apply it to any other yoga pose. I'll show you a couple kind of like shotgun boom 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 examples, but I'll break them down in later videos. So another very popular yoga pose is going to be pyramid pose. So your legs will be pretty wide, usually. I don't advise it, but your legs would be very wide. You would take your hands all the way to the floor and you would touch your nose to your knee. That's the classical version. I don't recommend it, but I'll show it to you really quick. Okay? So again, that puts my leg way beyond full range of motion. That's going to put unnecessary strain on my ligaments and my joints. That's going to create weakness in the joint capsules, weakness in the tissues, a lack of elasticity. So your tissues, when you stretch them out, they should want to come back to natural, to resting length. But the longer you hang out in a stretch, the less your tissues want to come back to their resting length. Okay, so instead of a full forward fold here, let's take a shorter stance, so a little shorter here. This way we're not hyperextending in the pelvis. So a short enough stance that you don't dump into the low back. So nice short stance, so you can still maintain this neutral pelvis here. You could even put a little bend in the back knee just to make sure you don't hyperextend on the front side of the hip. So you can put a little bend in the knee there. And you're on the balls of the foot, so you have better balance, and that it mimics the way that you walk, because classically the back heel will be down, right? But you don't walk like that. You don't walk with your feet turned out. So let's have the foot turned in, so we're mimicking the way we walk, because that's what we were evolved to do. So you lift up onto the balls of the foot, turn the hips forward, lift and stabilize through the midline, and then the same thing, you just lean forward. It's like a one-legged deadlift, basically. You're almost doing a one-legged deadlift, right? So you just lean forward until you feel that your hamstrings are fired up and your butt cheek is fired up and your back is fired up, and then you can come back out. Pretty simple. Or you could go down and hold as a static hold, and that's fine too. Okay, you can come back up. Now here's another example. You can do the same exact pose. So revolved triangle typically would be twisted like this. Again, it's a lot of hyperflexibility. You're kind of forcing your tissues. And whoa. And then instead we can take a shorter stance, bend the back knee so we're not hyperextending the back hip, lift, lean, and then just twist from here. You'll notice that in order to not turn your pelvis, because the tendency will be to turn your pelvis when you turn your chest. So in order to lean forward, keep your pelvis square and just turn through the rib cage will require a lot of oblique strength and back strength and coordination and balance, right? So you can even be here, inhale, twist, exhale down. So you can do these kinds of movements and come back up. Okay, so again, I'm just trying to give you some ideas so that you can start to modify your yoga poses. You can do this with any classical yoga pose that looks very flexible, and you can rethink it in a way that respects the anatomy of your joints and the stability of your joints and your tissues. Okay, cool. I really hope that's helpful, and I really want you to rethink the way that you're practicing, the way that you're, if you're a teacher, the way that you're teaching, so that we can keep each other safe and healthy and promote yoga as a very healthy practice into throughout the whole lifespan of a human being. So cool. Thanks.